chocolate. Be in the middle of the West, close your eyes, you might miss the kiss of a first love, smile of a friend, spiral of your life might cross your lens. Raw town homies deserve my verse. Two black twins, I'll give it to first. Father not around, big brother in the pen. Mama did her best, but she had demons. Lost her sons to the state branch.
You're telling a good story. There has to be a difference between juvenile justice and adult justice. What are you finding in your research? Hardcore people say, just treat these little sons of just like you would adults and let's get on with it? Is that what you're finding?
So right now it's 12:51, so in a half hour I gotta head up to the courtroom, plead not guilty, hope to get out of there, you know, just like I went in and not with shackles and handcuffs. This is my mom, her name is Lucy, you know, she's gonna go to court with me, and so are my aunts. Her name's Blanca and Anayeli, and he is like my best friend. He's like my brother, pretty much my brother, like my white brother. But yeah, he's also involved in the charges, so he still has to go.
I think we should go see if we can film in the JDC place. I think everyone should see what I had to go through for a year and a half.
When I was 14, I was going, in and out of jail, sort of, what I'm saying, up in Casper and stuff,
It's a filthy place up there. Just they got the old bars and stuff, and the paint chips are all falling off the walls. It's a nasty place.
And my dad, made and distribute meth through all Cheyenne and other towns, and he got caught, and I had nowhere to go.
Firsthand, I know these aren't bad kids. I've coached a lot of them. I would just like to try and help them. I always live by that quote, I'd rather die on my feet than live a lifetime on my knees.
Well, I think the Wyoming way should be to listen to someone who's had great experience in the law, and that's Gary Hartman.
We incarcerate more kids than any other state with the exception of South Dakota.
In the United States, as a general rule, we over-incarcerate. We over-incarcerate adults and we over-incarcerate youth.
I just have to say that whoever has the power to fix this juvenile justice system in Wyoming needs to get it done.
You're working for juvenile justice reform here in Wyoming, and if I remember correctly, you actually have been involved in the system before.
The kids not necessarily don't get their voice heard, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd leave it to a professional.
We have no central data place. That's sorely lacking. We have no clue on the number of kids that are hitting the system at all levels of the courts, and how does business make decisions without data?
Just simply facts. We try to find recidivism rates, all sorts of facts, and there's really nothing on Wyoming that we could find.
It's always been a great frustration working in Wyoming that we've never had the data, comprehensive juvenile justice data. And we've always asked for it, we've always wondered about how we could get it, and that's something that's never been able to occur.
You could take it both ways. You can say like, oh, the system sucks, but that's not going to get you anywhere if you just keep saying the system sucks. Sure, it does suck. We don't even know what's going on right now, like it's so secretive and stuff like that.
I tore my meniscus in my right knee, which I had to get an operation on actually. Yeah.
I think you guys should know that the system is completely messed up. I've tried to put it in the system before, and it messed me up a lot,
Cops didn't apologize to me or anything. No one didn't care.
It's your boy Impossible representing Goon Squad to the fullest.
All right. So I was really digging your song. We're going to play another one at the bottom of the next hour. So you guys are going to close out the show tonight. But we're going to kick it off. I've got the Clash, Know Your Rights. And yeah, that just kind of goes with the whole theme tonight. You're listening to 93.5 KOCI.
This summer, beside the boardwalks of Atlantic City, assembles a gathering of men and women whose life work is social welfare. Among them, a group whose specialty is U.S. crime. The crime experts are formulating an ambitious project in crime prevention. Among those present are California's Kenyon Scudder.
More than half the children coming into the juvenile courts of America are just ordinary youngsters who might have been kept out of trouble if the community had done something about it.
Wyoming people are thoughtful, well-read, articulate, and ornery, and highly opinionated.
I was born in the state. I was reared in this state. I went to the University of Wyoming as an undergraduate. I've lived in Wyoming for over 40 years.
Well, I was invited to come here and make a presentation to the Wyoming Judiciary Legislative Committee on the Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative.
If there is one thing that characterizes Wyomingites, it is a reluctance to admit that somebody from somewhere else may have a better idea. And it's time that we break free from that.
I want to talk a little bit, though, about the difference between a high-risk and a low-risk youth, because we are not letting high-risk youth out into the community. And so the list on the left there are typical offenses that we would classify high-risk. Low-risk youth, though, are those that have committed minor thefts, alcohol, drug violations, disorderly conduct, truancy, runaways, and technical probation violations.
And we need to get to the point where we say, we don't care where you're from, we don't care which party you're from, we simply want to know what works and what does not work.
I was best described as a fool, a boob, an idiot, arrogant, rebellious, mean.
We're immature, we're developing.
Some of us want to act like idiots.
Yeah, some of us want to act like idiots.
Another leader is New York's Dr. Frederick Thrasher.
Good probation and parole work are good crime prevention, but there is a more economical and a more effective way to prevent crime, and that is to nip the criminal careers in the bud.
We were destructive. We shot all the time, and we were very good, and we were very proud. So good that we shot at each other. We would get across the ravine on Sulphur Creek, see how close we could get to each other with 22 shells. That's pretty stupid. You can't get any more stupid than that.
I just turned 15. You know, I was living inside a foster home. It was just real strict foster home stuff. Like, you couldn't watch anything above PG. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, movies, it was like real strict. And so I didn't like that. You know, I was like, I'm not a kid, you know? And so I left, you know, and I kept leaving. So one day they finally called the cops on me. I was listening to my CD player, and I got off the bus and I was walking and I saw the cop. He was creeping on me. I was like, all right, I know this guy's here for me. And so I took off my headphones, I put it on inside my backpack, and I saw that he turned. I was like, damn. And he stopped, and the one cop on like the passenger side started opening up his door, and I just took off, booked it, went down an alley, hopped a fence, went down another alley.
I think early childhood education is very important. When you start talking about education at an early level, and we know that if you're not reading on level by the time you're in the 3rd grade, you are at great risk for dropping out of school. Unfortunately, in Wyoming, the last scores I've seen, only 60% of the kids in the 3rd grade statewide are reading at 3rd grade level. And I find that very alarming. And I'm saying to the judges, you better gear up, because if things don't change, if that doesn't improve, you're going to see these kids when they drop out of school in the 9th, 10th, or 11th grade.
There's some more science behind why teenagers take risks. There's the new plasticity in the brain. It makes teens more susceptible than adults to the external environment, which can, you know, make them more vulnerable to peer pressure and, you know, therefore commit more crimes and get incarcerated. We gotta grow, you know, we have a long ways to go still.
What I wanted to do was start off with a quote.
by Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass says, "It is easier to raise strong children than it is to repair broken men."
And they say, what did I read about? Was it Simpson when he was 18? And all they got to do is go back and find something that's been on the record for 30, 40, 50 years.
When I had the opportunity to talk to Senator Simpson, what I realized is that the issues that we're talking about, whether we send children to prison with adults, whether we give children the opportunity to hope that they could be more than the crime they committed, is something that crosses political lines. It's something that's fundamental to our society. I believe right now that the question of prison is the quintessential problem. It's the quintessential American problem. And how we deal with it will define us as a nation.
Today, they'd have done some bad things to us, because nowadays, politicians say, we're not going to let a kid get away with that. Send him on up the river. Get rid of them there. We don't care if they're 14 or 15 or 18. Get them out of society, and I think that's wrong.
I heard him, and then I sort of saw him at the corner of my eyes. Boom, 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 boom. He's going over these. It's like a big old field going over this field, and he just hit my knee. Boom, and I just flipped onto I didn't do a flip, but he hit me, and my back hit the hood, and I fell down. And he came out and he grabbed me. And he put my head the ground, and he put my hands behind me. He's like, "Don't you ever run from the police again." And he locked me in when he slid to the cop car.
Rawlins is population around 9,000. I believe that's included with the prison population. With the prison population, probably, I don't know, over 1,000 maybe. So for a small town, to say there's a gang problem here in Rawlins is just totally ridiculous. They can say all they want that there's a gang problem, and I think that may be part of the reason why they are pushing these juveniles through the system and trying to tag them as little gang bangers or gang activity. This helps their numbers. This helps what they're trying to do.
I get harassed all the time, There's this one day I'm walking my little cousin and my little brother, they're 12 and 13. I was walking them from my aunt's house to the other side of town.
Soreno actually is for the south side, and that's where I grew up. My whole life was on the south side. It's where all my friends live.
We're on the south side of Rawlins right now. There was the gateway here to south side, the underpass. It was me and a friend of mine, and we're just walking them because it was getting dark already. Well, we get pulled over, and the cops are saying, "Hey, so Jose, what are you doing? Are you guys recruiting?" I was like, "What do you mean recruiting? This is my little cousin. Are you sure about that? They're on curfew and all this. They're my little cousin. I'm walking them home because it's late." But they still stop by, see what we were doing. I get pulled over all the time just by walking.
Just because we dress like this or just because we like these type of things doesn't mean we're in a gang.
And we're walking, one of my friends decided to say, "Hey, let's put a dip in before we go to class." He gave me his chew can. I put some dip in. And the principal's office was right behind us, and he had a big old window, and all of a sudden you just hear him yell and told us to stop. And he came out 2 seconds later and took the chew can, took us into his office, and had the cops called. They searched me, and they gave me a ticket for minor possession of tobacco, and I received 6 months of probation and a $45 ticket.
Once a kid is shown that there is no hope, they ain't going to look for hope. But if you show the kids the way at an early age, more likely they're going to be more successful. They're going to be better adults, better members of society.
For 25 years, we have had virtually no changes in the juvenile justice code in Wyoming.
Some poor fellow named Basinger, I remember was his name. I met him later, even when I came back and had reformed. He said he was sitting on his porch that day and he thought there were bees. He thought there were hornets going past his head. Well, there weren't. It was shells, spent shells, because he was about a mile away, and shells do come down, and when they do, they spin, and they lose their velocity, but they make a noise like a bee. This was 1948. Wow, that's a long time ago. My buddies and I began to, with all our shooting, we we decided that we were so good that we could see how far away we could shoot a mailbox. How far away? We never shot anything up close because we were too skilled. So we just went up Diamond Base, and it was just a fusillade of shooting. On that day, when there were 72 holes in one mailbox, and you could get a $100 fine in 6 months per hole for destroying a federal property.
We're using an inordinate amount of money and resources on detention. We're using public funds to make kids worse.
I think that locking up a kid who's in DFS's custody should be ruled out.
The protagonist, the hero, would be the boy, of course, going through the system. The antagonist, the Wyoming system, which, you know, got him pretty bad.
My name's Robert Dean. I'm 19. I live in Whirlwind, Wyoming.
My 4-year odyssey starting in 2003.
And I ended up staying locked up for about 4 years for doing nothing illegal, really.
Wyoming is unique in the country in putting so many kids through the adult court system, resulting in criminal records for the kids, resulting in incarceration for minor offenses.
Incarcerating kids for minor offenses is just stupid because you put them in there and all it does is breed contempt, really.
Offenses such as smoking a cigarette in the school grounds or skateboarding in front of a sidewalk in a local bar. These are cases that I've heard in court that are being prosecuted in adult proceedings.
We do not have a juvenile court system in the state of Wyoming. You don't go to a building that says juvenile court.
And when you tell people around the country that in Wyoming, young people who are committing minor misdemeanors and status offenses are being prosecuted as adults, people's jaws drop. It's amazing. It's amazing. Because you are marking these children for life for something that in some cases is not even an offense.
The statistics that have been done show that in some counties, and I can recall Natrona County in particular, something like 93% of juveniles who are in the legal system are handled either in municipal court or circuit court. Those are adult courts. We don't have a kangaroo court in Wyoming. We have a kangaroo system when it comes to juveniles. A kangaroo court is one where justice is not done.
We're troubled by the fact that so many of the kids are in jail for probation violation. I think that number is about 64%.
In fact, the research now demonstrates pretty conclusively that the detention and incarceration of children is actually a risk factor for continued criminality rather than a deterrent.
A child who is tried as an adult is going to have a record, just as an adult would.
Fines can be imposed on them. They can be forced to into treatment that they have to pay for, regardless of their income or ability to pay for them. And many of these kids are poor and unable to afford the cost of court-ordered treatment. It's widespread throughout Wyoming that the prosecution of these young people as adults is for behavior that when I was a kid, I would be sent to the principal's office, brought to my parents for discipline, something much more appropriate than using up the expensive resources of criminal courts. In one county, there was a boy who was being prosecuted in an adult court for skateboarding on the sidewalk in front of the local bar.
He shouldn't be doing that, but he's trying to have a good time. You're locking him up for a good time.
In another county, I recall a young girl who was caught smoking, or actually just holding a cigarette on the school grounds across the street from the school. I observed a juvenile who had violated probation because he wasn't achieving in school adequately, and one of the inadequacies, a failure in a bowling class.
I threw some eggs at a house, which I thought was total bull, but like, it's whatever, you know?
And I thought about what happened when I was a kid, and our neighbor threw eggs at my parents' house. And my parents called the police.
Well, they counted it as vandalism actually, and they were gonna actually charge me for each egg for like $500 each egg.
Oh! What do you think you're doing out there? Hey, you kids, I'm calling the cops.
And the police came over, and the neighbor kids were brought into our living room, and my parents talked with them and asked them to clean the eggs off the side of the house, and if necessary, paint the side of the house.
Get out of here, you kids, I'm calling the cops.
The neighbor could have like easily came up and been like, all right, so if you can clean my house, then we can call it good, but it didn't do that, and we had to go through all this court crap.
And that's what the kids did, and they learned their lesson. And that's the kind of intervention that is effective, that makes good common sense.
A lot of kids don't understand that they're waiving their right to representation, but they do. I know that the state's public defender and guardian ad litem program is very concerned about that.
When I went to court, I had no idea what any rights were. I had no idea anything at all. I had no idea who my GAL was.
The vast majority of the kids who are being processed in adult courts are pleading guilty, often without the advice of counsel. They're waiving their right to counsel, often without having been advised by counsel of the effect of waiving that right. So we've been working with people in the state to create what a model system might look like, and to draft a statute that would reflect what people's vision of a system is. And it's very exciting to create a vision.
Act 2 would start as soon as he starts getting into trouble, leading into the detention. Showing what it was like to be there, the challenges inside.
A troubled kid does not deserve to be locked up. They need help.
This is Sheridan, where I got in trouble for smoking a cigarette. My stepmom had cracked my head open.
And I went to school with blood all over my head and stuff.
So they put me in a foster home in Sheridan, awaiting a court trial for me smoking a cigarette, and what grew into a chins petition because my dad couldn't always be home. And after I went to my initial hearing, they transferred me to the group home in Sheridan, right here. When I didn't work their program the way they wanted to, they negatively discharged me and sent me back to Casper to await a bed in the Whirlwind Boys School. Now I was here for about a year this time. Shackled me around the waist and my handcuffs to the waist, and then they shackled my feet also. They put me in a van and they drove me from Sheridan to Buffalo, to Whirlwind, to Thermopolis, to Shoshone, and then finally to Casper, which took about, I don't know, 8 or 9 hours.
Wyoming has a tradition of coming kicking and screaming into compliance with federal standards.
Wyoming is the only state in the country that doesn't participate in the Federal Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act. That act has been in place for 35 years, and it set very, very minimum standards for states.
There are 4 core requirements of the Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention Act, the JJDPA. I will try to briefly summarize them. The first is that states must take a serious look at their disproportionate minority contact.
They didn't think I spoke English for some reason, so it took me 3 hours to get booked in because they thought I didn't speak English. They didn't bother asking me.
So the disproportionate number of minority youth who are coming into contact with the system.
Because our system is broken, it's not representative, it's not equal, and it's not justice.
They must deinstitutionalize status offenders. So status offenders are, again, young people who have committed non-criminal offenses.
In Wyoming, it is a criminal offense for a child to possess alcohol. Most other states treat that as a status offense, means it would not be an offense if it was committed by an adult.
States are not allowed, except under narrow circumstances, to put status offenders in detention or institutions.
Unfortunately, we still have judges, we still have prosecutors who like to have that hammer over the juvenile's head to say, hey, this is a criminal offense. If you violate, you can go to jail.
States must also abide by 2 mandates that ensure that young people do not come into contact with adult offenders.
We know that the public does not like putting kids in adult jails, and that polls at 80-90% every single time we poll, no matter where we poll, no matter where in the country.
The real issue is not that we're not in compliance, but to me the real issue is that by not coming into compliance, it means that we are not treating children the way we should.
We also know that the public wants kids to be rehabilitated, and they strongly favor investments like education and job training.
If we have all this money and this grant to make this video, let's make it happen. Let's get all the people we can, everything we just...
Do you want to join our production team?
I think that Friedenthal definitely needs to be in this video.
You know, I actually think people are making a fair amount of progress. You know, we keep talking about how, something I want to get on the record, we keep talking about how we're out of compliance with federal guidelines. Remember, we opted out of those guidelines. So it is true, we're not complying with them, but we opted out. So we're not in non-compliance, we just didn't bother to start. Now, having said that, you have an awful lot of people who are much more focused on trying to not just comply with the spirit of those standards, but go beyond them.
You know, Wyoming does need to have some standards. We need to have standards around our detention. We need to have some standards around how we decide who should be in those detention facilities. And I think these 2 bills are a big step forward to try and help us get down that road.
The journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. I think we ought to take this step. I think our kids deserve it. We've been messing around with this bill for 14 years.
Yes, and the 2 bills do 2 very important things. What we're trying to do is reduce the number of kids that we're putting into what we call hardware secure facilities. These are places where the bars clang and it looks like a jail. Kids don't need to be in jails. That should be reserved for kids with serious violent crimes. Otherwise, they should be in staff secure facilities, or even better yet, back to their parents.
I suggest that we do start looking at some of these bills and not just putting them aside and say, well, maybe next time we'll do it. We have had lawsuits. We've had lawsuits at the state mental institution. We've had lawsuits in Lander. And then we say, oh gosh, we really need to do something. Is that the way we want to be directed, through lawsuits?
We can save an awful lot of money if you can identify that child who has much bigger problems than just the MIP at the very first time you see that child.
I bring this out because of the fact of we're in this big, gigantic race to get something accomplished before we've identified the problem.
I've only been in the legislature for 3 years. We've had more discussions about juvenile justice. We're not rushing. You know, my kids are going to have kids by the time this problem is solved, and I'm going to be who knows where.
We're making better criminals out of our juveniles when we put them in facilities that are not appropriate. And then we are paying the bill as citizens of the state of Wyoming by sending them to Rawlins at $30,000 to $40,000 per person.
We're looking at brand new facilities, brand new philosophy, brand new everything. And I'll tell you what, to let one part of the state that has 37% recidivism rate drive this is unconscionable.
To sum it up, I too am frustrated. But we need to answer some of the core questions to get over that frustration and decide what we want to do and how we want to proceed and do that. If we want to become an OJGDP compliant state, then we can do that. That's fairly simple. Somebody just pays the bill, figures out what to do with the kids, writes the standards, and away we go. If we don't, then let's work at what those other pieces of the pie are, and let's have everybody at the table.
This is a first baby step, and we may not see any legislation this session.
I blew itching powder on a girl one day in the school. And the principal then, who was named after this school here, Glenn Livingston School, wonderful guy, he got us all out on a hot spring day, so we're going to play shirts and skins and play a little basketball today. I said, great, that'll be fun. We worked up a sweat. He came over with the itching powder, put it on my back and rubbed it in. He said, how does that feel?
When I was at the boys' school, I was diagnosed with manic depressive and bipolar disorder, which I don't see that, but that's what they did. And the lithium, it caused me to see things, and I was paranoid, I thought people were talking to me when they weren't.
We also know that by locking kids up, you further exacerbate mental health problems.
When I was at WBI, they gave me drugs to help with my bipolar, supposedly, and I felt like I didn't need that, I was just a kid that grew up with a hard life.
Every facility, almost every kid goes in there, does not come out without having a diagnosis with some kind of sleeping med, or that you get a drug when you go somewhere, you get something.
They asked you what was wrong. Well, I'm kind of depressed because I'm locked up away from my family. Oh, well, you need Zoloft and Seroquel and lithium and trazodone because you're not going to sleep, and it was really crooked.
These kids are not sick. These kids need access to the kinds of supports and services to help them turn their lives around. And frankly, we're over-medicating and over-medicalizing children in the system.
They'd call for meds in the morning where the nurse would come in, you'd all line up, and there might have been 3 people in that whole building that didn't line up in the morning to get their medication.
I'm not a social scientist. I'm a guy that did a lot of shitty things and have shared that experience. I'm not a shrink. My experience is that when people play shrink, they're usually way off base. Find new work. Unless you are a shrink, and then you might find new work too.
Actually, Big Nose George was guilty of committing this very heinous crime of ambushing these 2 law enforcement officers in ambush on Rattlesnake Canyon up on Elk Mountain. And he was returned to stand trial in Rawlins. They then overran the jail, forced the sheriff to turn the prisoner over to them, and they hauled Big Nose George out to a telegraph pole in front of the Carbon County Courthouse and hanged him from a telegraph pole.
My friend Jose, he was charged with receiving stolen property and breaking and entering. He served 11 months for it as a juvenile, but in a county jail with adults.
I wasn't like an A student or anything like that, but I was doing okay to where I was passing my classes.
Enough to graduate.
But I got locked up, and guess what? Everything went down. I had nothing but a stop sign. Like I blew a stop sign.
Ticket.
Yeah, a ticket. That's it on my record before I went in there. I was 17. Then I was put in jail for 10 months, and I wasn't even a juvie. It was just a regular jail with adults and everything.
County jail.
It was a county jail, Carbon County jail. I got involved in like buying stereo equipment and trading it to people. Well, I ran into some stolen stuff. I don't know, somehow the police found out I had it, so they went and searched my house and everything, and they took a lot of stuff that wasn't even stolen and tried building a case like to have me as a burglar and, you know, destroying property and a lot of stuff. I went into the interrogation room, and that's what he says, you know, you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent, but I still want to talk to you. So he starts asking me all these questions of how I got him. I answer every single one of them, and he thought I was lying, so he just took me in, like handcuffed me and everything, and took my wallet and my car keys to my mom, and I didn't get to say goodbye to my mom or anything. Of course, she started crying. They wouldn't let me out. They put my bond was $10,000, which I didn't have $10,000. They gave you 180 days for a speedy trial. The beginning of August 4th, I went in, and they didn't transport me anywhere. They just left me there. I turned 18 in there on November. What finally got me out was my attorney said, well, you got to say you're guilty to something, so they let you out faster. And if not, they're going to take you to trial, try and get you in longer. What I said, well, what do I admit to? I mean, I didn't do it. And what we came up with is she told me pretty much to say I was guilty to receiving stolen property, which was still a felony. They didn't want to make it a misdemeanor. When I was in court, they supposedly had fingerprints and shoe prints. When I was in court, I asked them, you know, do any fingerprints match with mine? They said no. And did any of the shoe prints that you guys have match with mine? They said no. And then what are you holding against me? They said, we know you did it because this guy that was at a party drunk said that I was saying that
hearsay. It's all hearsay.
Yeah, it was all hearsay.
No fact. Just they can't not stand to not figure out a case. They need to
be right. They
need to solve the case, no matter if it's
true or not,
damaging other people's lives that had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. To them, I was already guilty. You know, when I went out to the court, the prosecuting attorney was telling the judge, yeah, he's a menace to society, he's a danger to our community, and this. But I didn't have a record at all. But he was still making it as seem like I had a
proportion,
like I was some kind of killer, murderer, or something like that. Initially, they wanted me for 11 years. So it was either 11 years or just
3 years probation.
2 weeks ago, we go to the park on Southside. We're walking his dog. You know, we start playing basketball with my little cousins. You know, the usual in the park. Yeah. We get tired, sit down next to the benches.
And they have these little posts with chains interlocking them. Yeah. And these chains have been broken for months, you know, maybe a year.
Maybe a year.
And so the cops come up, 3 cops come to get me and Jose, and they told us that they had someone reported us breaking the chains just then.
You can go all the way back even into early Wyoming history in cases where the county sheriffs very frequently in Wyoming and the judges in the various districts in Wyoming felt that they had the primary responsibility for dispensing justice in their communities, and they didn't much like interference on the part of the federal government, but they didn't even like interference on the part of state government.
I think the sheriffs were really going to push back hard with the concept of any agency from the state, I'm not picking on DFS, but any agency of the state, dictating this is how you will run your facility.
I am not a person who is in favor of allowing the sheriffs to make their own standards. And I think that it's just, it makes sense because those standards there are tried and true standards that are already available.
I just seem to think if we include everybody, we're in a far better position for parents and everybody to know what to expect.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Sessions, you're absolutely correct.
My position is the more stakeholders you can bring to the table to work these things out and get agreement on, the better off this state is going to be. So what I'm saying is, I think that the legislature needs to take a positive stand and say, yes, we're going to adopt some standards.
I stand before you today representing thousands of kids. I'm going to ask you guys to go back to Judge Hartman's testimony when a kid is unjustly thrown into a jail cell and exposed to criminal minds.
Standards such as you do not house a child that maybe had a minor crime and you just can't seem to find the parent, and you're suddenly housing them with a violent criminal.
As a 12-year-old boy, I did just that. Standing in front of jail cell 3B, I was told, you see this kid? He's a murderer, and you're going into a cell. This is where you belong, and this is where you're going to stay.
The other bill, what that deals with is what's called an assessment. So that when the officer picks up a kid at 2 in the morning for a crime, that he can figure out through an assessment tool, objectively, not subjectively, where should I put this kid?
As I walked into that jail cell, knowing I was there on an unruly charge, blood on his hands and malice in his heart, the kid called me an explicit. You're doing push-ups all night, he said. You're going to do what I say. Well, I said, you're not going to call me that explicit. I know I'm on your turf. I'll do your push-ups, and I will survive. And I did that.
Over and over, the same recommendations are made time and time again. You could take the 1981 report that the Attorney General's office commissioned and put 2009 on it, and it would be just as appropriate.
Byron Odicombe, representing the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police. We would welcome a discussion of having uniformity in terms of our standards, recognizing that our piece of this pile that I sense the frustration with is a very small piece of the pie.
Chairman Gingrich. But I'm just worried if we just say, well, this is just too complicated, there's a lot more to do, and then we don't do anything this year, that we're further behind. You know, I guess I'm sort of leaning toward, let's do something.
Chairman Ross, Chairman Gingrich, Wyoming leaders, unify the system. Give these kids the protection they need against the criminal mindset they learn the moment they step into these places. We're going to save lives. We're going to save thousands of futures. Protect these kids. Protect these kids.
You end up locking up more kids who are Hispanic and they get more attention and all of that. It's really a reflection about how the schools are managing those populations and culturally how Cheyenne as a community is coping with Hispanics culturally.
Since I'm in probation right now, and that stuff with the chains in the park, if I get found guilty for whatever reason, if I don't show enough information, enough evidence that I'm innocent, I get locked up for 5 years.
The citizenry like to have tough police. They like to have people on the street in their town who don't take any crap off of a teenager.
Brandy.
Yes. May I speak with Detective please?
May I ask who's calling, please?
My name is Marc Homer.
One moment, please.
Hi, this is Detective. This is Marc Homer, and I'm in Rawlins now, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to interview for the juvenile justice film that I'm producing. Did you?
No, thanks. The chief has directed us to have you contact him for any of that information.
He is in a meeting or talking to somebody already. Can I take a message for him and have him return your call?
Sure. My phone number he can reach me at is 307
Because I'm pretty sure the city knows
that it's been broken.
It's been broken for a while, but they're still trying to get me for it. If I can't prove it, I'm going for 5 years.
In Rawlins, they unfairly discriminate against Hispanics.
No, but I'm not Hispanic.
The detective of the case, he thinks I'm a bad person based on pretty much nothing, because there was nothing on my record that, had me as a criminal. The only thing that there was, a violation of a stop sign. And, he's just making assumptions, I guess, like, oh, this guy looks like a bad guy. He's Mexican. Let's bring him in. I can't break law no matter what, Even my probation officer said even a seatbelt ticket might risk my freedom. This is our crime scene.
The crime scene right here.
What is this?
This is crime scene.
So right now it's 12:51. So in a half hour, I gotta head up to the courtroom, plead not guilty, hope to get out of there, just like I went in, and not with shackles and handcuffs.
Buena suerte. Good luck. Lo necesito.
I'm under the charges of property destruction, which involves a chain being broken, and at the park. I don't know if you can see that. It says dismissed by the judge. They dismissed the charges, and I'm heading home. I think we've been through it, and like I said, I wasn't worried because we had enough evidence that we weren't even guilty or anything.
Pretty sure they knew that we didn't do nothing.
Yeah,
that's why they dismissed the charges.
They're probably even gonna get pissed off because they can get me on that and try and pin other things on me.
Even when you've done your time, it's hard to stay out of trouble. You go up again and again until you grow up and know how to get by. By that time, the fellows know you're a tough one. They admire you.
I believe that anyone that went through that incarceration system that wasn't really a criminal was profoundly affected by it.
What's at stake for the hero? His life, his sanity, schooling, friends, society.
They shackled me up because I smoked a cigarette and didn't have guardians to watch me, so I was a criminal. When I got to Casper, they'd drive you into the basement.
I don't know how to explain it. It makes you feel dead. I think as a juvenile going to jail, you experience death.
Well, we do have a facility that's inadequate.
Unfortunately, kids are still being held in that facility. It's led to some sexual abuse occurring in that facility. It's just not a good situation.
This is Casper, where I spent 1 year and 4 months in jail, just waiting to go to another center or institution.
Well, the current facility that we have now lacks a sprinkler system. Dr. Roush has pointed out it does have some hanging hazards.
They unshackled me. Well, they didn't unshackle me. They put me up in the elevator and then unshackled me when I got to the top floor and in-processed me.
If you've seen the Casper facility, you know that it's not a good situation. Kids are being held in an old jail that was determined unfit for adults over 10 years ago.
The ACLU sued Natrona County in the early 90s.
I can still remember my first time going to JDC, the Juvenile Detention Center. As soon as the door closed, I remember I just started crying, and I felt like my whole body went numb, and I was screaming and begging and asking for somebody to give me an explanation for why I was there.
And the kinds of conditions that you've described in Wyoming in this particular facility sound horrendous. And I am sad to say Wyoming's not unique in that, and that we as a country need to be taking a good, long, hard look at where we put our kids.
My first night there, when I was 13, I first went there. First night he brought around all the kids that were on transition, And outside of our cell, outside of the glass, he'd be like, you know, choose your bitch, you know, which really, you know, scared me. 13, first time in jail. And he'd always say things like, you know, I'll take you into the water closet and rape you. And he was my least favorite of them all.
At JDC, I got stabbed twice, once in the head and once in the chest.
I can remember one of the counselors telling me that I looked like the exorcist going in there. I just lost all control. It was the scariest thing to be placed somewhere that I've never been, because you're never in jail until you go to jail. And
the one in the head, a kid had grabbed a Lysol sanitizing spray bottle and crushed it up and made like a little shank out of it, and he stabbed me in the head.
I was just left there to cry, and there was nothing I can do. I was so lost. My body was empty.
I would say to anybody who's willing to lock up a child in a facility with no windows and with no room to exercise and with no education, I would ask that person, would you put your child there? And if you wouldn't put your child there, don't put your neighbor's child there, because your neighbor's child is coming back into your neighborhood, and they will bear the mark of that treatment.
They didn't teach you anything, you know, all you did was crossword puzzles and, you know, color pictures and stuff. It was like being in kindergarten all over again.
I didn't do anything. I learned how to do more awful things in there. I knew how to, you know, make drugs in there and stuff.
I strongly believe that anyone that goes there that didn't go there as a criminal could be turned into a criminal by their peers.
My education going through jail, I had none.
I look back on it, you know, I really wish I'd been in school and, you know, learning and getting credits and, you know, go to college and stuff. I wanted to be an architect, and I don't think that's going to happen now.
You got to get your Jesus shoes off and get down in the muck. And when you get your Jesus shoes off and deal with them as a fellow human being in extremity, you're going to make some progress.
I went out with a friend one night, and you know, it was a crazy night. Went down to Fort Collins with the club suite, and on the way back, we met up with these kids from St. Louis. Supposedly, I guess they're Bloods, and they liked us a lot. And I guess you get 5-point star tattoos if you're a Blood. And so the one kid gave me this tattoo, supposedly in the back seat of this car, on the way back to Cheyenne. So. And I had no idea about that. I woke up the next morning with it.
His mom had really wanted him to be part of the Special Friends program, and so there we were matched. We were matched to be like the big brother sort of thing, and that's how I got to know Dustin and his mom. And his mom always was great about involving Dustin in good programs, to the YMCA and various other things.
I was 12 years old, and I was living with my mom, and she actually passed away before I turned 13. And I went to go live with my dad.
And he moved back in with his dad, and then his dad got in trouble again.
And my dad, you know, made and you know, distribute meth through all Cheyenne and, like, you know, other towns, you know. And he got caught. And I had nowhere to go.
We were able to be with Dustin when his mom died, and involved in helping him, you know, plan the funeral with his couple of his aunts came out.
I actually wasn't there whenever they made the meth, but you know, you see how to make the pipes, how to sell it, how to weigh it. I mean, what to do to get it.
But that was difficult when his mom got sick and died, and that was obviously a very traumatic time for him.
But before my mom had passed away, she made sure that me and Brendan had a strong bond, and so when she did pass away and my dad got sent back to prison, I had nowhere to go, and since me and Brendan had a strong bond, he took me in, which was great, you know.
Why hasn't Wyoming found, like, the political will to change this juvenile justice system?
The governor has been very supportive of juvenile justice issues, and he's been very responsive to some of the recommendations that the council has made, and I believe that overall In the last few years, there has been a great deal of progress because of that partnership.
Good afternoon. The order of business today will be that we will do the two juvenile justice standards bills.
They're not monumental bills, but what they stand for is that finally the Wyoming leadership is standing up, or Wyoming legislature is standing up and saying, this is an important issue, and we're showing our leadership.
Would the committee chairman like to come up and address this? And Judge Hartman, since you were intimately involved in it?
And now we're starting to work on standards for how we treat our juveniles throughout the state and to try to treat them uniformly and equally. And this is a good step towards that. I just applaud the committee. It's been my great honor to serve as co-chairman of that committee for the past several years, and I'm just excited that we're moving some things forward now.
Given that they've addressed both of them, I'll sign both of them.
I think it's very exciting that the Wyoming leaders are taking progressive steps towards preventing the experiences that have happened to me to other kids in the juvenile justice system.
We still have a lot of work to do on the back end. Why are those kids in there for probation revocations? Are there other viable alternatives in the communities? And if so, how do we get communities to start utilizing those facilities instead of detention?
This is Casper, where I spent 1 year and 4 months in jail. They sent up a transportation guy from Casper to Sheridan, from Buffalo to Whirland. It's about 4 hours. From Whirland to Thermopolis, and Thermopolis to Shoshone, Shoshone to Casper, which is another 4 hours about. And when I got to Casper, they unshackled me, booked me in. I was shackled by the hands to a chain around my belt. I couldn't move it any more than that. And I spent 12 months in Casper, awaiting a bed in Whirland. When I was at JDC, I was locked down in my cell, and one night, you knew what was happening. You could hear the screaming, all that stuff. When I went in the next day to the day room and stuff, we talked amongst ourselves, and this kid had been raped in there. And nothing, I know the guards heard it because I heard it, and they sit right outside the cells in the hallway. I think we should go see if we can film in the JDC place. I think everyone should see what I had to go through for a year and a half.
Right now we're on the 3rd floor at the Juvenile Detention Center. I was incarcerated here for most of my teenage years, on and off, but the longest I was here was about 3 months at a time, 6 months at a time.
We called and tried to figure out something for you, but with the population we got right now, there's no way to go in.
How many kids are in there right now?
25.
25? And what are they in there for?
Well, various, everywhere from possession to Grand Theft Auto.
I definitely believe that the majority of the kids that are in JDC right now should not be there. And I'm positive there are some that should be there, serving sentences. But for the majority of the reasons that kids go to places like JDC are heinous.
Yeah, you got to remember, this facility is a pre and post adjudication. We're holding kids waiting for court, or we're holding kids that have been sentenced waiting for their placement.
You could look up my file, I was there, and that's why I was there. I didn't steal anything, I didn't hurt anybody, I wasn't selling drugs, I wasn't, stealing cars or anything like that.
I got pissed off when I couldn't see my family.
Okay.
That's that's the only thing I had, my family.
So me and Jose were walking home.
Me and Cody were just walking from a friend's house.
We saw some guys come out of the trailer.
This one guy just, starts trouble.
And we're walking. They started, talking, trying to get us riled up to fight with them.
him and Cody get into it.
They came up on us, so it just started like happening right then.
The guy ran back into his trailer house, and when he came out, he brought 2 kitchen knives.
A little bit of scrapping.
Before the cops got there,
we heard the cops pull up, so we ran a couple blocks.
so I just decided to run. Just went for it. You know, almost got away, but the cop pulled out the taser, you know, hit me in the back.
The cops like stopped us and arrested us for what just happened for the fight.
An hour later, they found me under a truck. Cause you know what I did was I kept running and I slid under a truck. So you know I thought I was gonna be safe there. But there was an officer that was driving by, and he was able to see my foot. He told me to just get out. You know, he already had me, so I just did, and I was booked into the Casper County Jail in Rawlins, Wyoming.
And they shackled me up, and they drove me back up to Buffalo, and then west to Worland, where I spent 6 months at the boys' school. And at Worland, I spent 6 months there before I was released and went home. I consider it a gladiator school. Everyone there wants to fight, you know, everyone there wants to make everyone else their bitch, or, you know, everyone just wants to be an asshole. And to move from that situation where, you know, I did have a good parent at home, even though he wasn't there all the time, to that situation was really frustrating.
Were you the guy asking all the questions about juvenile justice? Yeah. My firm is the architectural firm that's designing the new one in Natrona County.
Are you? And the gymnasium is here, and the outdoor courtyard is here.
The plan that we really have at this point in time is to try and look at regional detention facilities.
We're applying for $8 million of stimulus money, and the governor does have, I think, roughly $15 million of discretionary funds that he can spend. We're applying for 8 of it.
One of the concerns I have about any facility is that it will be filled, and the cost of keeping kids in a facility is very high.
This is the proposed new facility that we're attempting to build. Sprinkler system, outdoor recreation, fresh air and exercise.
I don't know what your daily costs are in Wyoming, but this is an average, about $200 a day to keep a kid in detention.
Recently I was in court, and the estimate given was $300 a day to maintain a child in a particular facility.
But you can run a very effective alternative program for $35 a day or less, in fact, much less. So there's a huge cost savings.
My belief is this: it's a field of dreams strategy, which is if you build it, they will come. So if you build these facilities in communities, these facilities will get filled with children. So and it's not based on whether or not those kids should be incarcerated and are a risk to public safety.
I do think that we need to be careful about how many beds we build, because if you spend all of your juvenile service dollars maintaining and staffing those beds, then that becomes your main intervention.
This would be co-located with the next to the adult facility. Although it would be sight and sound separate, it would have a sally port, or a corridor here that would be connected to the adult facility.
I think the last thing we need is for anyone to build any more juvenile jails. But as long as it's, you know, better conditions for those that deserve to go there, you know, that's fine. But, you know, connecting one to an adult jail, I don't think that's a good idea.
There would be a fence around the entire facility.
Okay.
I mean, it is a secure facility.
We do want facilities for kids just in case if they do get in trouble, but we don't want more and more and more places for kids to go.
Well, the outcome, I hope, is less recidivism. You know, my hope is to have productive adults, productive tax-paying, job, you know, working, family-raising adults in our community. My hope is to advance our community, to build our community, and not to warehouse kids, you know, and to do what is appropriate for our kids. That's my hope.
We can't hand out a cookie cutter and say, every county, you're going to do it this way. Instead, we give ideas, and particularly, and this is something Senator Burns and I brought back from our national meeting, was Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative, JDAI. And we're really pushing that should be the model that counties start adopting.
In August, they released a report showing dramatic results, reducing recidivism, increasing the cost effectiveness of programs by keeping kids in community-based alternatives to detention and keeping kids out of detention in the first place.
And it's a model that was created by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, which has been adopted throughout the nation in other states. And this year, Judge Hartman has arranged for some pilot projects in particular counties, and I think that's really going to be where we find a real difference.
So it's actually a very innovative approach where you have the private foundation, private dollars, government, and local communities working together on behalf of their kids and communities.
Jail certainly is needed in certain circumstances, but you really want to reserve hardware-secure facility detention for serious violent crime.
Three board rentals, five lift tickets, and one boot rental, please. The cost of putting them in jail is quite a bit more than a day out skiing a month. Plus, it helps them do something positive with their lives instead of just sitting around in a cell or wherever they may be, you know, a house or wherever they may be placed. This just helps them get out and enjoy the outdoors of Wyoming, and helps them grow, you know, their hobbies and things they like to do.
Well, I got caught with possession of marijuana, and that's why that was like about maybe like a year and a half ago. So I've been through this whole issues with probation and stuff like that. This is the hell of a better choice than any of that, you know, like, because here you actually get to, like, you do what you want, you know, you don't really need anything, like any drugs or something, like, because you're occupied skiing, for heaven's sake.
In Laramie, you know, these kids live in an amazing playground for recreation, and half of them don't know it. And so we try and expose them to that. We've hung on to our core philosophy that is kids need support from caring adults, and role modeling is a real key, we think, to reaching out to these kids. We also recognize that teens are into risk-taking and adrenaline and that kind of thing, and we try to teach them that you don't have to break the law to get that powerful rush of adrenaline.
PY, the Progressive Youth. I think it's really nice because I actually got a little ankle thing around my ankle.
You don't have to get into drugs or drinking or those kind of things. We found all these businesses out there that are willing to take these kids in, and we make it youth-centered. So the kid that's real interested in automotive stuff, he can do his community service hours around that shop.
And like doing yoga, it gets your body all healthy and stuff. So I think it's great what they're doing.
When you get into the system-involved kids, that's where we've had amazing changes. But it used to be that a kid on probation had a 60 to 80% chance of being revoked and ending up in jail. We've dropped that for kids in our program down to anywhere from 12 to 20% that will reoffend or end up going back to jail.
I wish the state would put more money into that instead of just actually trying to punish the kids, because that's not really doing anything. We should have figured that one out a long time ago, you know.
You know, we had such good luck with kids that were in state care and state probation and intensive supervised probation, but we started looking at what can we do before they get to that point. Those are the ones that we really think that they get into the system and they start to think the world's out to get them. We can approach them and say, you know what, you're a normal kid, you just made a mistake and got caught.
That was ridiculous. It was kid stuff, but I guess I haven't learned my lesson yet, so that's why I'm here right now.
Sentencing a young kid to yoga sounds great to me. It sounds like the kind of creative and innovative approach to working with young people. Yoga is the kind of exercise and positive interaction that young people can do to become self-aware and develop assets and strengths.
We hold them accountable for what they did, but we also show them that they have potential.
Life lessons, really, I guess. Like if, to be able to listen to other people's commands, I guess you could say. And that's a really tough lesson to get around, but I guess it's what you gotta do.
It turns out that it's working, and that program's even better because we have, I think the last number I saw is only 7% of the kids that are finishing that program are ending up actually in probation and state care and going to court. So.
Tell you the truth, this is a really nice place, you know? It's got some good, kind people in it, you know, and, you know, you could talk to them about things, and, you know, it's really quite nice here, actually. I actually started doing activity. I started playing basketball all over again, you know. I started sweating for the first time, really. But, yeah, it's quite nice here, you know. It's quite nice. It's nice to get away from, like, everything, you know what I mean?
That's the essence of diversion. And again, it's different than a lot of traditional diversion programs where it's compliance-based and urine tests and curfews and that kind of thing. And instead, we're taking the mentoring approach to these kids.
Before the 48 great social welfare agencies represented at Atlantic City is laid the broadest project ever attempted in social work. The coordination of all existing national and local welfare agencies, schools, YMCAs, boys clubs, Boy Scouts, working together to the end that children in danger of becoming delinquent, in need of guidance and correction, may have continuous supervision.
What you guys are doing is critically important. Don't let me be negative as to what you're doing. You need to have care and compassion.
Incarcerating juveniles for curfew offenses is ridiculous.
The system is broken in ways that are unbelievable, and we really need to put the same resources and talents into the justice system and into our justice system and in the crime prevention that we put into something like going to the moon.
Times have changed, and the time to change is now.
I think we can all agree that desired outcomes are not necessarily tied to the level of dollars spent. According to DFS, we currently spend $68 million a year on juvenile justice, and that's outside of the hundreds of thousands of probably millions of dollars that get spent locally on this issue.
I think Wyoming really needs to get a juvenile justice system down and start helping people that really need it.
That we made it because we're bringing it home.
I have in the studio with me again, I have Dustin and the rest of Goon Squad.
I was able to finally enroll in college, you know, because of the way my life is going right now, you know, so I'm going to be doing that. You know. Right now, I don't know what I'm going to study, you know, just general studies right now, you know what I'm saying. Right now, I've just been working on some music stuff. This group I'm working with called Goon Squad is actually working on trying to go on tour.
All my gifts were for me, so you better believe that I never believed that I could ever achieve. I'm chasing my dream and stacking up the cream. It seemed like a fantasy. 10 years later, I turn it to reality. Now you can catch me on the TV. I see that you hate me. It's because we made it. Oh, I forgot I wasn't supposed to. Coming out of my situation. Always got told that I would be a statistic, but I never listen, cause I ain't meant to wash dishes.
Worst thing I ever did as a juvenile, a friend of mine had a GTO. We'd take it down a dirt road going 100 miles per hour on our lunch break. So you guys are reenacting that, and when I say hit it, just like tear down that road, man.
We're lowriders, man.
What's that mean?
We ride slow and low.
Okay, have it your way. Take it slow, man.
Suppose they had the choice of pleading guilty
going to the pen for 5 years, pleading not guilty, and getting deported for 20 years. And he chose not to go to the prison. He chose to get deported.
At least I'm free right now. I'm not locked up or anything. I'm gonna show you around right now. Show you a few places down here in Juarez, and I don't know. Hope you like it. All right. So now that I'm in Mexico, I gotta do some different plans that I got in my mind. First, I gotta finish high school. Start a good job. They need someone speaking English out here. So I'll try and figure something out. I'm kicking it with my family right now, so I hope that's going pretty good. I finally got to see them. It's been about 10 years since I've been here. It's kind of different. It's a big change for me right now. But I guess all I got to do is keep moving forward. Keep my head up, and just see what else is up the road. Also, I want to give a shout out to Cody. Cody just got out of Wyoming. It's crazy down there. Before something else happens, you never know.
My role to help the youth here in Rawlins is basically keep them involved. If I see a kid that's not doing any sport or is not doing anything productive, I try and invite them. I say, hey, why don't you go out for wrestling, or why don't I see you out on the basketball court? I think it's about time change is made. I don't want to just sit back year after year after year seeing these kids' lives being ruined when firsthand I know these aren't bad kids.
I'm just working in a deli. I'm trying to save up money, but it's really hard because as soon as I get it, it's gone. And I'm just trying to move forward, but it's really hard. I've lost all opportunity for an education at this point, and I can't get a professional job. I work for minimum wage, and I'm just surviving now.
So I want you to do this reenactment where you get in your car.
I'm sorry, I can't. I have a car, but I don't have any insurance, and I can't afford tags.
Because we're bringing it home, and I see that you hating, cause all y'all know that we own. You should be glad that we made it, because we're bringing it home, and I see that you hating, cause all y'all know that we own. It's Goons Squad.
City in the middle of the west. Close your eyes, you might miss the kiss of a first love, smile of a friend, spiral of your life might cross your lens. Raw town homies deserve my verse. Two black twins, I'll give it to first. Father not around, big brother in the pen. Mama did her best, but she had demons. Lost her sons to the state round 12. Heart of a man in the chest of a child. never play the sucker, never back down. Brother stayed strong, taught me about pride. Now I stand on my own too, with that lie. Wouldn't be me now, without the south side. Gotta pay respect to that chapter of my life.
As the breeze grows heavy and we flow like rain, recollect the lies that my people might get. Light of your life made me who I am. You inside of me spiral nowhere.
White boy from the north side, middle class life. 5th grade jump shot, let the wrist fly. Hoop dreams floated up so high. A stripe was the distance between you and I. Used to battle on the court, talk a lot of mess. Dug the same girls, felt the same stress. In a city that divide the you from the I. Us versus them, eye for an eye. Never asked you why you crossed those lines. You were a bridge ahead of your time. Used to catch a lot of wreck, disrespect from your north side friends. And them racist kids, newest cats that you stood by. Didn't have it easy, still the same story. Can't ignore it, gotta live my life. I'ma do what's right, try to give something back. I'ma do what I can.
As the breeze grows heavy and we flow like rain, recollect the lies that my people might get. Light of your life made me who I am. You inside of me spiral nowhere.
Sometimes I sit on a cloud and think, me inside of you inside of me. Like a breeze that curl, a twist of the winds. I could be you, you could stand right here, brown sister. I remember the days, hate in the city used to blur like haze. Couldn't wait to escape, find new ground. Few months gone, you back in the town. Hollywood dreams never planned like this. 19 pregnant with your first kid. Years slid by, first son, got a brother. Respect and praise, you a beautiful mother.